Good morning, everyone. Dear students, let's continue with the chapter Evans Tries an O-Level by Colin Dexter. In the previous lecture, we read that when McLeary, the person of Mary Mag's church, reached in Oxford prison to do the duty of invigilator, he was received by Stephens, the junior prison officer who has recently recruited in the profession. Stephens took him to Evans. Evans was concentrating on his elementary book of German grammar, as he had to appear in the exam. Let's continue. It was 9:10 a.m. when the governor switched on the receiver. He had instructed Jackson to tell Evans of the temporary little precautions. That was only fair. But wasn't it all a bit theoretical? Schoolboyish almost. How on earth was Evans going to try anything that day? If he was so anxious to make another break, why in heaven's name hadn't he tried it from the recreational block? Much easier, but he hadn't. And there he was now, sitting in a locked cell. All the prison officers were alert. Two more locked doors between the cell and yard with a wall as high as a haystack. Evans was as safe as houses. At 9:10 a.m., the governor switched on the receiver because the exam had to start at 9:15 a.m. Evans was also instructed by Jackson of the little precautions, but it was only theoretical because it was impossible for Evans to do anything wrong that day. Because if he was worried to go away from jail, he must have done so from the recreational block. That was much easier, but he didn't do that. That day he was sitting in a locked room. All the prison officers were alert. Two more locked doors were there between his cell and the yard, and the wall of yard was very high. Evans was absolutely safe that day. Anyway, it wouldn't be any trouble at all to have the receiver turned on for the couple of hours. The governor thought that he must turn on the receiver for 2 hours. It wasn't as if there was going to be anything to listen to, though he knew very well that he would not listen anything. Amongst other things, an invigilator's duty was to ensure that the strictest silence was observed, as the observer's duty was to keep a pin drop silence. But still this nagging doubt, might Evans try to take advantage of McLeary, get him to smuggle in a chisel or two or a rope ladder. But even then doubt was there in the mind of governor that Evans could attack McLeary with some weapon. The governor sat up sharply. It was all very well getting rid of any potential weapon that Evans could have used, but what about McLeary? What if, quite unwittingly, the innocent McLeary had brought in something himself, a jackknife or so? What if Evans held him hostage with such a weapon? Suddenly, an idea came into the mind of Governor. He sat up sharply. He thought that it was nice that they had searched Evans thoroughly. But if unwittingly means unknowingly, without thinking, McLeary would have brought some weapon, and Evans could attack him with the same weapon. The governor reached for the phone. It was 9:12 a.m. At 9:12 a.m., the governor contacted Jackson through phone. The examinee and the invigilator had already been introduced by Stephens when Jackson came back and shouted to McLeary through the cell door, "Can you come outside a minute, sir? You too, Stephens." The examiner and invigilator were introduced by Stephens. Just then Jackson came. He shouted to McLeary and Stephens to come out of the cell, and he told that the governor was worried about something that McLeary had brought by mistake. Jackson quickly explained the governor's worry, and McLeary patiently held out his arms at shoulder level while Jackson lightly freezed his clothes. McLeary held his arms at shoulder level, and Jackson searched his clothes. "Something hid here. He found something." "My reading glasses," replied McLeary, looking down at the spectacle case. McLeary, looking at the spectacle case, told that it were his reading glasses. Actually, The reading classes were brought for Stephens when he had to impersonate just like McLeary, because one pair was worn by McLeary, another was for Evans. Jackson quickly reassured him. Bending down on the landing, thumb fickled the catches on the suitcase. After that, bending on the suitcase, he searched the suitcase. He picked up each envelope in turn, carefully passed his palms along their surface, and seemed satisfied. With the help of palms, he searched each and every envelope, and he was satisfied. He riffled curiously through a few pages of Holy Writ. He riffled the pages of Holy Writ also, vaguely shook the church Times also. All right so far. But one of the objects in McLeary's suitcase was puzzling him sorely. Sorely means badly. One object puzzled Jackson badly, which was there in McLeary's suitcase. Do you mind telling me why you have brought this? He held up a smallish semi-inflated rubber ring, such as a young child with a waist of about 12 inches might have struggled into. Jackson asked McLeary why had he brought the object. It was a smallish semi-inflated rubber ring, in which a child with a waist of 12 inches would enter with difficulty. You thinking of going for a swim? Joking, he asked whether he wanted to go for swimming. McLeary, hitherto amenable demeanor, was slightly ruffled by the tasteless little pleasantry. Hitherto means up to now, amiable means friendly, demeanor means behavior. Up to now, McLeary was of friendly behavior with Jackson. Now he was confused with the tasteless joke, and he answered Jackson someone sorely. Sorely means badly. He answered, if you must know, I suffer from hemorrhoids, and when I am sitting down for any length of time. He told that he was suffering from piles. Piles is the disease of Bawasir, and he was not able to sit for a long time. That was why that rubber ring was helpful. Actually, in that rubber ring, the blood of pig was there, and when Evans would show that he is wounded by when he would impersonate McLeary, and he would show that he is injured by McLeary, that blood of pig would be poured on himself by him. Very sorry, sir. I didn't mean to embarrass you. The embarrassment was still reddening Jackson's cheeks when he found the paper knife at the bottom of the case. Just then Jackson found the paper knife at the bottom of the case. I think I would better keep this though. Jackson told that he would keep the knife with himself. It was 9:18 a.m. before the governor heard their voices again. It was clear that the examination was going to more than a little late in getting underway. The examination was late, it was confirmed. You have got a watch? Yes, sir. McLeary asked whether Evans had a watch. He confirmed. McLeary, I will be telling you when to start and again when you have got 5 minutes left. McLeary, there are plenty of these writing papers should you need. McLeary, now write the name of the paper 0211 in the top left hand corner. In the top right hand corner, write your index number 313, and in the box just below that write your center number 271. All right. McLeary, I am now going to introduce. Evans, is it going to stay here? Stephens was standing there. Evans asked McLeary whether Stephens would stay in the cell. I don't know about that, McLeary told. Stephens, Mr. Jackson has given me strict instructions. Stephens answered that he would stay there only as he was instructed by Mr. Jackson, who is the senior prison officer. Evans, how am I supposed to concentrate on my exam with someone breathing down my neck? Evans told that he would not be able to concentrate on his exam if someone was standing beside him. The governor reached for the phone. Jackson, good. Get Stephens out of the cell. I think we are perhaps overdoing things. The governor was listening. He ordered Jackson that he must bring Stephens out of the cell, and he told that they were doing over strictness. As you wish, sir. The governor heard the exchanges in the cell, heard the door clang once more, heard McLeary announce that the examination had started. It was 9:25 a.m. and there was a great calm. With silence, at 9:25 a.m. the exam started. At 9:40 am, the examination board rang through, and the assistant secretary with special responsibility for modern languages asked to speak to the governor. At 9:40 am, there was a call from the examination board, and the assistant secretary with special responsibility for modern languages wanted to talk to the governor. The examination had already started a quarter of an hour ago. Well, there was a correction slip which some fool had forgotten to place in the examination package. Very brief. Could the governor please? He informed that a correction slip was left by mistake. Yes, of course. I will put you straight to Mr. Jackson in D Wing. The governor told him that he should contact to Mr. Jackson in D Wing. Hold the line, please. Was this the sort of thing the governor had feared? The governor was afraid. Was the phone call a fake? It could be a hoax. It could be some signal, some secret. But he could check on that immediately. He thought that he should check immediately. He dialed the number of the examination board but heard only the staccato bleep of line engaged. But then the line was engaged, wasn't it? Not very intelligent. The governor thought that he must confirm, but then he thought that he must not be mad. Actually, the phone call was made by the friend of Ivan's, and that was a part of their plan of escape. 2 minutes later, he heard some whispering communication in the cell, and then McCleary's broad Scott voice. McCleary used to speak in broad Scott voice. Will you please stop writing a while, Mr. Evans, and listen carefully? Candidates offering German 0211 should note the following correction. On page 3, line 15, the fourth word should read Goldenen, not Goldine. The governor listened and smiled. He had taken German in the 6th form himself. The governor had read German in 6th standard, and he remembered all about the agreements of adjective. And so did McCleary. By the sound of things, for the minister's pronunciation was more impressive. The governor knew that the minister was intelligent, and his accent was very impressive. But what about Evans? He probably didn't know what an adjective was. But the governor was thinking that Evans didn't know anything about German. The phone rang again. The magistrate's court. They needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers. Remand case. Just then a second call was received. It was from magistrate court, and a prison van and 2 prison officers were needed for remand case. And within 2 minutes the governor was wondering whether that could be a hoax. He told himself not to be silly. Silly means mad. The governor thought that it could be a fake call, but then he thought that he must not be mad. His imagination was beginning to run riot. Various ideas came into his mind. Actually, that call was also made by the men of Evans, and that was a part of their plan, because that van and prison officers will be used later when Evans would escape from the hotel. For the first quarter of an hour, Stephen had dutifully peered through the peephole at intervals of 1 minute or so. After that, every 2 minutes. At 10:45 am, everything was still all right as he looked through the peephole once more. Stephen peeped through the hole after every 1 minute. But after 15 minutes, he started peeping after every 2 minutes. Up to 10:45 am, everything was okay. It took 4 or 5 seconds or more. What was the point? It was always more or less the same. Evans, his pen between his lips, sat staring straight in front of him towards the door, seeking, it seemed, some sorely needed inspiration from somewhere. Every time when Stephen peeped through the hole, Evans was sitting with his pen between his lips. He was staring towards the door. It appeared that he wanted some sorely needed inspiration from somewhere. Opposite him McCleary, and opposite him was seated McCleary, slightly askew. Askew means tircha, from the table. His face in semi-profile. Semi-profile means half visible. His hair amateurishly clipped pretty close to the scalp. The hair of minister was near the scalp, amateurishly clipped, and his eyes behind the pebble lenses peering short-sightedly at the church times. He was peering at the church times. His right index finger hooked beneath the narrow clerical collar. right index finger was near the narrow clerical collar, and the finger of the left hand, the nails meticulously manicured. Meticulously means properly manicured. Slowly stroking the short black beard. He was stroking his black beard. He was wearing two clerical collars. Once he had brought for Evans because Evans would impersonate McCleary. And he had a black beard also, which will be pasted by Evans. At 10:50 am, the receiver cracked to life, and the governor realized he had almost forgotten Evans for a few minutes. Please, sir, would you mind if I put a blanket round my shoulders? It's a bit parky here. Parky means chill, cool. Evans asked whether he could take a blanket on his shoulder, and it was cold here. There is one on my bunk. He told that the blanket was on his berth. Be quick about that. McCleary ordered that he must take quickly. At 10:51 am, Stephens was more than a little surprised to see a grey regulation blanket draped around Evans' shoulders. Draped means covered. At 10:51 am, Stephens was surprised when he saw that a grey-colored blanket was covered on Evans' shoulders, and he frowned slightly. Looked at the examinee more closely. He looked at Evans closely, but Evans, the pen still between his teeth, was staring just as vacantly as before, blankly beneath a blanket. Should Stephen report the slight irregularity? Stephen thought that he must tell about the blanket to Jackson. Anything at all fishy? He thought that something wrong was there, hadn't Jackson said. He looked through the peephole once more, and even as he did, Evans pulled the dirty blanket more closely to himself. Was he planning a sudden batsman leap to suffocate McCleary in the blanket? He thought that he could suffocate McCleary in that blanket. Don't be daft. Then he thought that he must not be silly. There was never any sun on this side of the prison, no heating either. During the summer months also, it could get quite chilly in some of the cells. Stephens decided to revert to his earlier every minute observation. Satisfying himself that there was cold in that part, Stephens' reverted means came back again to his observation of 1 minute. At 11:20 am, the receiver once more cracked across the silence of the governor's office, and McCleary informed Evans that only 5 minutes were left. The examination was almost over, but something still gnawed away quietly in the governor's mind. He reached for the phone once again, but something was puzzling the governor. He wanted to contact through phone. At 11:22 am, Jackson shouted along the corridor to Stephens. Jackson shouted to Stephens. The governor wanted to speak with him, that the governor wanted to talk to him. Hurry, man. Stephens picked up the phone apprehensively. Apprehensively means afraid, with fear. Stephens picked the phone and listened to the rapidly spoken orders. Rapidly means hurriedly spoken orders. Stephens himself was to accompany McCleary to the main prison gate. The governor told that Stephen himself would accompany McCleary to the main gate. Understand, Stephens personally was to make absolutely sure that the door was locked on Evans after McCleary had left the cell. The governor also ordered that he must close the door before going to see of McCleary. Actually, it was not the voice of governor. It was one of the friends of Evans, and it was a part of their plan. Because when he would go to the prison gate to see of McCleary, in that time, Evans would impersonate McCleary in the room to confuse all the jail authorities. At 11:25 am, the governor heard the final exchanges. Stop writing, please. Silence. Put your sheets in order and see they are correctly numbered. Scrapping of chairs and tables. Thank you very much. All right. Not too bad. Good, Mr. Stephens. The governor heard the door clang for the last time. The examination was over. How did he get on, do you think? Asked Stephens as he walked beside McCleary to the main gate. When Stephens was going to the main gate by the side of McCleary to see him off, he asked whether Evans had performed something in the exam. Oh, I can't think he has distinguished himself. I am afraid. His coat accent seemed broader than ever. Knowingly, McCleary changed his accent and made it broader, and he told that he didn't think that Evans knew anything, and his long black overcoat reaching almost to the knees. His black overcoat was knitting to the knees because earlier he was wearing two overcoats. One he had given to Evans to impersonate McCleary, fostered the illusion that he had suddenly grown slimmer. It was created doubt that he had gone slimmer during those 2 hours. Stephens felt pleased that the governor had asked him, not Jackson, to see McCleary off the premises. Stephens was feeling proud that though he was junior, even that the governor had ordered him to see off McCleary to the main gate. And all in the morning had gone pretty well. Everything had gone okay. But something stopped him from making his way directly to the canteen for a belated cup of coffee. But some idea came into his mind. He didn't go to the canteen to take coffee. He wanted to take just one last look at Evans. Only one time again he wanted to see Evans whether everything was okay. It was like a program he had seen on TV about a woman who could never really convince herself that she had locked the front door when she had gone to bed. Often she would got up 12, 15, sometimes 20 times to check the bolt. He re-entered Deaving, made his way along to Ivan's cell, and opened the peephole once more. Oh Christ! There sprawled back in Ivan's chair was a man. Sprawled means spread. A man was spread in Ivan's chair. For a semi-second, Stephens thought that it was Evans. A grey regulation blanket slipping from his shoulder. A grey-colored blanket was slipped from his shoulders. The front of his closely cropped, irregularly tufted hair awash with fierce blood. His hair was awash with blood. It has dripped already through the black beard. Black beard was also awash with blood and was now spreading horribly over the white clerical collar down into the black clerical front. From white collar, it was coming to the black coat. Stephen shouted wildly for Jackson. Stephens called Jackson, and the words appeared to penetrate the curtain of blood that veiled minister's ears. For the minister's hand felt feebly for a handkerchief from his pocket. McCleary brought out a handkerchief from his pocket, held it to his bleeding head. He held the handkerchief on his bleeding head, the blood seeping slowly through the white linen. The cotton handkerchief was seeping the blood. He gave a long, low moan. He was crying and tried to speak. He tried to speak something, but his voice trailed away. Trailed away means weakened, but his voice was weakened. And by the time Jackson had arrived, dispatched Stephens to ring the police and the ambulance. Just then Jackson came. He ordered Stephens to ring the police and to call the ambulance. The handkerchief was a sticky, squenchy watch of cloth. The handkerchief was absolutely wet with blood. McCleary slowly raised himself, his face twisted tightly with pain. McCleary slowly raised. His face was twisted with pain. Don't worry about the ambulance, man. I am all right. Get the police. Actually, he is Evans. He is confusing the jail authorities. He told that he was all right. They must call the police. I know where. He announced that he knew where Evans had gone. He closed his eyes and another drip of blood splashed like a huge red raindrop on the wooden floor. His hand felt along the table, found the German question paper and grasped it tightly in his blood-stained head. In his blood-stained head, he picked the German question paper tightly. Get the governor, I know where. And he announced that they must call the governor. He would tell where Evans had gone. Almost immediately, sirens were sounding. Prison officers barked orders. Puzzled prisoners pushed their ways along the corridor. Doors were banged and bolted, and phones were ringing everywhere. Within a minute, McLeary, with Jackson and Stephens supporting him on either side, his face now streaked and caked with dying blood, was greeted in the prison yard by the governor, perplexed and confused. Immediately, all the jail authorities were alert. Sirens were sounding. Prison officers barked orders. Puzzled prisoners pushed each other in the corridor. Phones were ringing. And McLeary was brought in the yard by Stephens and Jackson before the governor. And the governor was confused and said, "We must get you to hospital immediately." First of all, the governor ordered that McLeary should be reached to hospital. "You have called the police?" Yes, they are on the way. The governor told that the police was on its way. I am all right. Look here." Oh, quietly, he opened the German question paper and thrust it before the governor's face. "It's there. Do you see what I mean?" He showed the German question paper to the governor and told what he wanted to say. The governor looked down and realized what McLeary was trying to tell. The governor was able to understand what he wanted to tell. A photocopied sheet had been cleverly superimposed over the last page of the question paper. Photocopied sheet was imposed on the last paper of question paper. "You see what they have done, governor? You see?" His voice trailed off again. Trailed off means weakened. Again his voice was weakened, and he told you must know where he had gone, dressing the layers of long neglected learning, willed himself to translate the German text paper. The governor was dressing means searching the long neglected German, and he wanted to translate the question paper himself. When he translated, he read, "You must follow the plan already somethinged." In that question paper, instructions was given to Evans that he must choke out the plan. The virtual point in time is 3 minutes before the end of the examination. What he had to do before 3 minutes of the exam. But something don't hit him too hard. It was written that he must not attack badly. He is a person, because he is a person of the church, and don't overdo the Scott accent. And when he would go to the gate, he must look after the Scott accent. A fast approaching siren wailed to its crescendo, and the great doors of the prison yard were pushed back. A white police car squeaked to a jerky halt beside them. Detective Superintendent Carter swung himself out of the passenger seat and saluted the governor. Just then a car reached. Detective Superintendent Carter had come, and he came out of the passenger seat and he saluted the governor. "What the hell has happened?" He told that what had happened, and turning to McLeary, "Christ, who has hit him?" And he was puzzled that who had attacked him. But McLeary cut across whatever explanation the governor might have given. Before that the governor could speak something, McLeary stopped him and started speaking. "Elsfield Way, officer." "I know where he was." He was breathing heavily and leaned for support against the side of car, where the imprint of his hand was left in tarnished crimson. Tarnished crimson means dark red. He takes support of the car, and dark red blood was left on the car, and he told that Evans had gone towards Elsfield Way. In bewilderment, Carter looked at the governor for guidance. Bewilderment means fear. Carter looked at the governor, and he wanted that the governor should guide him. "Take him with you if you think he will be all right. He is the only one who seems to know what's happening." The governor told Carter that he must take McLeary with him, because McLeary was the only person who knew something about the matter. Carter opened the back door and helped McLeary inside, and within a few seconds the car leaped away in a spurt of gravel. When he made McLeary sit in the car, he went away from there. "Elsfield Way," McLeary had said, and there it was, staring up at the German governor from the last few lines of the German text. When they had gone, the governor looked intently at the German question paper, and it was written that Elsfield Way, from Elsfield Way to drive to Haddington roundabout. From Elsfield Way he had to go to Haddington roundabout. Yes, of course, the examination board was in Elsfield Way. The governor was able to understand that examination board was also there in Elsfield Way, and someone from the board must have been involved in the escape plan from the very beginning. The question paper itself, he was able to understand that someone from the examination board was involved in the plan, and it was clear from the question paper also. The governor turned to Jackson and Stephen and asked them that they knew very well what had happened. The governor told Jackson and Stephen he wanted to scold them that they knew very well what had happened. We'll continue.